Did you know this podcast is powered by Acast? Acast is the home of podcasting. For creators looking for freedom to grow their listeners and make money too. And creative brands looking for smart ways to advertise. Podcasters and advertisers in the know Acast. It's time you did too. Visit acast.com to find out more. Acast, for the stories.
Paul Bushnell to talk podcasts. And a great theme this week, podcast demanding your attention.
Yeah, because, all of us, I think, I've got to say, if I'm watching Netflix, I have to make a decision. Do I watch it in subtitles with my full attention, or is it not all that great, and do I watch it in English language, in a dubbed version, as kind of stuff I can also look at my screen, or a phone, an iPad, or something similar. These are podcasts where you have to pay attention. You have to devote your ears to them, either by putting your ears actually in headphones, rather than just having them sort of in the background. And they really do pay off because they're richly textured, complicated. The problem is, if you don't pay attention to them, you kind of lose track with where you are, because they're quite complicated and quite rich worlds that both of these podcast series create.
And podcasts, for the most part, tend to be non-fiction, right? An expert or a comedian or someone talking about something. But this first one, Tumanbay, sounds like it's fictional? Yeah,
absolutely. These are both actually by the same creators, in fact, which is the linking thing. A creator who's got a connection to RNZ, actually, as a former head of drama. But it's not because of that I've chosen it, because they're both tremendously interesting works, actually. One of them is called Tumanbay, which is this sort of build slightly, as you can imagine. It was created from 2015 to 2020, ran for quite a number of series on the BBC, hour-long episodes. And it's billed as a kind of radio version of Game of Thrones. It's set in a fantasy land, and telling this complicated story of sort of plotting and intrigue and daring do and sort of sword fights and all that kind of stuff and so on. But the other one, The Cipher, is a much more contemporary work. It premiered actually on the BBC. It actually all dropped on the BBC website actually on Boxing Day last year. So really recent. It was a huge success, very much orientated towards the youth adult market.
Cool.
So two very different works in some ways.
Yeah. So tell us about Tumanbay first.
Yeah, well, Tumanbay is aiming to create a full fantasy world. And it really is like one where you're entering into the Game of Thrones. You've got a sort of quasi-medieval setting, located in somewhere that's kind of like the Middle East, though, because you've got sultans rather than kings. You've got grand viziers as opposed to the sort of king's hand and so on. And you've got a similar kind of mix of sort of plotting. You've got slaves, harems, you've got lots of backstabbing and so on. You've got a rebel army that seems to be threatening the principal character in the early episodes and so on. So there are those resonances with Game of Thrones are there. But the amazing thing for me, and the thing I was delighted about, was that it works without pictures. The pictures are in your head. Because of the incredibly powerful and very sophisticated sound design, which is one of the real features of John Dryden, even when his career many, many years ago, decades ago actually, as a drama producer for the BBC. And it's something which works incredibly powerful if it's done really, really well.
Well, they used to call it theatre of the mind, didn't they?
Yeah, and the great thing is that it can be evoked very simply, but in his case, he's working with great sound designers and also working with a script which is in the case written, as he wrote Tumanbay himself. He's executive produced The Cipher, but he's known for a lot of his work where he'll do cinematic style recording, take the cast actually out into the field to actually record, even though no one's looking. You don't see anything. Yeah. And the advantage of that is that, well, there's one thing. You get the actors having to put their scripts down because they're actually in a physical space and they have to learn the words. So they become sort of more embedded in the way that kind of theatre actors do, or cinema or TV actors do traditionally. But the other thing is that sense of connection between the people. Huge challenges with the more recent work with The Cipher. But Tumanbay was something which was, I think, a bit more studio-focused, studio-based in terms of recordings. But clearly the sense of connection between the actors as actors mean that it brings those characters to life. They're added with a very rich and complex sound design. Absolutely brings this sort of medieval Game of Thrones fantasy kind of thing absolutely to life.
And speaking of which, I can never keep track of who was who on Game of Thrones. So I imagine in audio that might be even more tricky. Is there a narrator reminding you?
We've got a clever stuff. We've got a sort of semi-narrator in the sense of a principal character who's, when we sort of hear his asides about what's happening and so on. And that's great. I've listened to about the first 5 or 6 episodes now, and that seems pretty typical. And that holds us in place and keeps track of where we're at. And also, at this stage, it hasn't got quite as complex as Game of Thrones. So, I mean, there are a lot more episodes to go. I've only listened to five so far. There are 34 in total. There's quite a few hours to go. And but stuff I really want to listen to because I'm engaged with it. I want to put on those headphones or have the sound system turn up loud at home to really listen and be able to sort of wallow in that kind of sound world.
Okay, and then what about the other one, the Cypher?
Yeah, well, the Cypher is very, very different kind of production style because it was in fact originally designed literally was to be taken out in the field, and then production collided with COVID. The COVID year, and so what you ended up with was actors not only and there were actors actually who are in different studios in different cities in different parts of the world, all recording at the same time, of course. But as well as that, they had actors who were in the same building who were in different studios because of COVID, talking in different microphones, as you're so used to doing with many of your guests and people around the country where you don't see them. Yeah. The innovation that John Dryden brought in this time was to actually have everyone linked by video camera as well too, so they could see the face of the actor that they were acting with. So it's a bit like the kind of Zoom experience, but with really good quality sound, and no need to mute the microphones because you have this great engineering stuff behind you.
And this one's set in the present day.
Yeah, it's a present day thing. It's a young adult thing, so it's, you think, a little bit like kind of like The Matrix in a way, but not nearly as pompous as that. It's much clever. It's slightly more tongue in cheek. Some very witty stuff. Some great performances from young adult stars. I think they are mostly in their 20s, but playing characters who are a little bit younger. And it's got a real sense of sort of present day experience, present day technology as well too, and a great sort of twisty, thrillerish science fiction kind of plot. At the end, it gets in. There's one element of the plot you think, oh no, don't tell me it's this cliche. But the great thing is there's enough, actually robot related stuff actually, which is, oh, that's a surprise. Oh, and oh, that's touching, and oh, I really believe this. And then there's a lovely thing at the end which brings up beautifully, takes it right back to the very start of the series with a little bit of a promise for what's clearly going to be a throw to series 2 as well too. So really fun, really satisfying. It's 5 hours. I started refreshing my listening yesterday, thinking I'd listened to just a couple of episodes, having listened to all of them way back in January, February, and sat for 5 hours yesterday listening to this because it was really so gripping. So it's a huge amount of fun.
Suitable for younger children or really teenagers?
No, I think it's really teenagers. There's quite a bit of reasonably graphic audio, of course, only, but violence. I mean, it's a bit that reminds me, when I'm watching Game of Thrones, I hate violence. Yeah. So I just shut my eyes. Yeah. And with Game of Thrones, when the squishy stuff ends, it's safe to open your eyes. I think that's by and large true also of Tumen-Bay. In the case of the Cypher, it's a slightly more sort of stuff to do with guns and that kind of thing. So it's I would say teenagers.
Your typical YA audience.
That's it, very much so, yeah. A lot of fun.
Paul Bushnell, thanks so much.
Thank you.
Looking for a new podcast to listen to? Here's what we love, courtesy of Acast Recommends.
What's going on, everybody? This is Mac Wilds, 1/3 of the almighty Guys Next Door. And if you're listening to this, we want you to be a neighbor. Now, I know you guys are probably thinking, like, what do these guys talk about? What is that? Well, listen, we talk about everything under the sun. We talk about everything that it means to be a young millennial man in today's society, whether it's finance, the type of condoms that you use, or how to deal with love issues, or lack of emotion. We talk about everything, and we go there, guys. We go there. We really, really have a lot of fun. So if you guys would love to, we would love you to come on over, come mosey on down, right past Sesame Street. We want you guys to come kick it with us. Come get some sugar. We are the Guys Next Door. Peace.
Acast recommends.